Hey there, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be talking about two of my favorite indie CQB games, 0 Hour and Ground Branch. The goal here is to pit them against each other to find out which one is best for you to purchase. To accomplish this, we're going to split the video into 5 sections and judge the games accordingly. These sections are customization, gunplay, AI, multiplayer, and last but not least, maps. It's also important to note that if you're watching this video, I'm assuming you already know these games at a very basic level. So if you don't, go watch their individual reviews I've made up here. Oh, you done? Perfect. Now we can actually get into the video. So both of these games have pretty decent amounts of customization, but one of them really takes the cake. We'll figure out which one that is soon, but for now, let's start by talking about 0 Hour. So 0 Hour allows you to customize a lot about your weapons in 3 ways. We have rails, sights, and muzzles. The customization in rails is basically just lasers and flashlights, but you are able to choose between 2 laser types, so that's pretty cool. There's also the sight section, which lets you choose between a few sights depending on which gun you're using. They have a small but pretty varied selection here. There aren't a ton of options, but they have the basics, stuff like red dots, ACOGs, and holographics. The last and probably most important section is muzzles. Here you can pick between a suppressor, flash hider, or a compensator. Again, all of this is dependent on the gun you pick. These are cool because you can actually change up the gameplay a bit depending on how loud or quiet you want your assault to be, and muzzles change just that. So yeah, it's a pretty decent amount of customization, but Ground Branch basically blows it out of the water. You see, in this game, you can customize your loadout like I've never seen before. Ground Branch gives you the normal 2 slots for weapons, a primary and a sidearm, obviously, but also adds another 10 slots for gear and clothing. Think that's a lot? Well, just wait, there's even more once you click into one of those categories. On guns, you can customize things like lights and lasers, rails and mounts, sights, your underbarrel, muzzles, and your magazines and ammo. The customization is basically unparalleled. You can add canted sights, risers, rail panels, and much more. Plus, these attachments don't just immediately pop into place. You have to manually choose where they go. And while the guns do have the most to change, other types of gear are customizable as well. You can change things like your clothes, camos, helmet attachments, and even the utility pouch on your vest. Basically, Ground Branch is the obvious winner of the customization section, especially when you consider just how many more weapons it has compared to 0 Hour. Just don't take this as a huge downside to poor 0 Hour because I honestly haven't really cared about its lack of customization. There's enough there to play the game, which is really all you need. Not to mention, it has had far less development time compared to Ground Branch by about 2 years. Sure, it would be nice if there was more to customize in 0 Hour, but it really isn't a deal breaker, especially since I'm certain there will be more coming in the near future. Okay, now we're talking about how those customizable weapons from the last category feel within the actual game, and they both feel fine. But there are a few differences I should touch on. So like last time, we're going to talk about 0 Hour first. The gunplay in 0 Hour is totally fine, totally good. I like the feel of the weapons, they move with you, they feel steady, and they feel solid. They also have some pretty good sound design and overall do exactly what they need to do. They aren't spectacular, but they won't hold you back. They're kind of just there doing their job, nothing more, nothing less. Ground Branch is a bit different. The guns themselves are obviously much more detailed due to the customization we talked about earlier, but they also feel much more realistic with features like fatigue and weapon stances. I've also noticed a bit more realism and movement in Ground Branch. It feels like your character has a bit of momentum to them, which is a really subtle but noticeable feature. I've also noticed that Ground Branch has much better sounding weapons than 0 Hour. It isn't really the most important thing, but it is there and it does help you feel immersed. Here's a side by side, see if you can hear the difference. It might just be up to personal preference, but I do think Ground Branch sounds better. But honestly, I probably would have never noticed until I put them directly side by side. Who knows, maybe I'm just crazy. Overall, I'm gonna have to say Ground Branch has the better gunplay experience, but not by a long shot. 0 Hours is honestly pretty dang good. They both do the job well without doing anything to detract from the gameplay. Ground Branch is just a little bit better. Alright, now we get to talk about the most important part of these two games, the AI, a factor that is more important than you might think. AI can really make or break the PvE experience, so which one does it better? Let's see. 0 Hour's AI is honestly really dang good, most of the time. You can tell that the dev team has put a lot of thought into the AI because they're super fun and better made than many other games. They make new moves every match, know how to flank, can take hostages, can fake surrendering, and even hide under beds. There's a lot to them, and it makes them feel much harder and more unpredictable than ordinary AI. But they have some downsides as well. The game has its fair share of bugs, and most of them are definitely with the AI. The two biggest issues I found are invisible enemies and really bad desync when it comes to enemies. It looks like the AI are kind of run client-side at times because they can be doing two totally different things on two other people's screens, which can be very infuriating. It's not fun getting killed by an enemy who isn't even pointing a gun at you, and it's even worse getting killed by an invisible man. Ground Branch is a different story. The AI in the game is pretty average, not really anything special. They see you, they shoot, and they take cover. Sometimes they reposition after fire, or rush you when they hear you, but they just feel basic. Not bad, just basic. They just don't bring anything special to the table. They don't do anything that wows me. Even the difficulty they bring is kind of boring in my opinion. The AI in Ground Branch feels more like I'm dying to an AI that's difficult because they might be able to see through walls and they can insta-headshot me pretty quickly. Whereas 0 Hours feels difficult because they move unpredictably and give you much more to worry about, like hostages and surrendering. Because, I forgot to mention this, but you can lose points in 0 Hour if you fire during either of those situations. And that really brings me to the answer of the section. While neither game has an inherently bad AI, it's obvious that 0 Hours provides a much more fun and replayable experience, even if they do have a pretty bad tendency to bug out. So I'm gonna be completely honest here. I mostly play these games multiplayer in the PvE modes, but I went ahead and tried a bit of each game's PvP section just for you guys so that we could have a fair comparison going on here. And this is what I found out. 0 Hour has a pretty solid PvP and PvE multiplayer experience. It still feels very early access like the rest of the game, but honestly, it's not that terrible. The PvP was fun and felt very similar to the PvE mode, but with much smarter enemies, since they're people. I had a really fun time doing it, and it felt a lot like a bit of a better Rainbow Six Siege, but unfortunately it did play a little bit too fast. As with most PvP games, my teammates really like to rush and be impatient, so I can't really say it was an amazing tactical experience. However, playing PvE with a group of friends is spectacular and definitely the best way for this game to be played. Just having clear communication and a plan makes it so much more fun. The only issue is you kind of need friends who also like the game, which is easier said than done. If that might be an issue for you, don't worry. Join my Discord, the link is down below. I'm sure we can find you some folks to play with if you can't find them in-game, which is a bit of an issue since this game has a pretty low player count at times due to its indie-ness. Ground Branch also had a pretty decent multiplayer experience, but its PvP was much better than 0 Hours if I'm being completely honest. And I think I know the reason why. My teammates actually tried to take these matches seriously. The enemies were well coordinated and so was most of the team. It was probably the best CQB PvP experience I've ever had, but its PvE wasn't as good. Like I've mentioned before, Ground Branch's AI just isn't very fun, so the PvE multiplayer was decent but not as engaging as 0 Hours, simply because the AI in this game is just kind of boring in my opinion. One thing that they do have in common is the struggle to find a match. Ground Branch unfortunately also has a fairly low player count, but it's slightly alleviated by the server browser, which I much prefer to 0 Hours queuing. This way you can actually see how many people are currently online rather than crossing your fingers and hoping for the best. Honestly, they're both great experiences and each one had a strong side, so I'll just have to say this. Ground Branch wins for PvP and 0 Hour definitely wins for PvE. Okay, and now we've made it to the last and arguably most divisive section, the maps. These differ a lot between the games and really change the feel of the entire experience a ton. So let's get into it, starting with 0 Hour as always. 0 Hour has 9 maps and all of them feel really well made and really detailed. They're fun to move through and have tons of rooms, corners, and balconies to check out. Each map feels very unique, which in turn greatly changes your strategy from location to location. 0 Hour also has procedural generation to some degree on all of its maps. It is awesome, and it brings the replayability value up by a ton. Each time you play a map, you're guaranteed a new experience due to the combination of unpredictable AI, differing traps, doorstops, and the procedurally generated rooms. These changes aren't huge themselves, but they make a huge difference. Doors and rooms can be blocked from certain entrances, furniture shifts around, and the AI moves according to that. I know I said it already, but it's awesome. Ground Branch has the same number of maps, and they have their merits as well. These maps are much bigger than 0 Hours and give you a lot of area to keep an eye on. This makes the game a lot scarier because enemies could be hiding anywhere and from very long distances. They can be taking shots at you from really far away in this game. These maps also have a lot of variety and separate themselves from each other nicely. Each map provides a new experience, whether it's a cave, a forest, or a city. The only downside to these maps is that they can take a really long time to clear, just due to their size. And you get shot by enemies you've never seen a lot, but hey, you just gotta be more careful next time. The map category is also really hard to pick a winner for since both of these games have great but very different maps. In the end, 0 Hour just does maps better. While they are smaller, I feel like that captures the CQB feeling better, and the procedural generation is just the cherry on top. It makes all the difference. Okay, and now we're just going to talk about some of the things that I couldn't fit into the main categories, but are pretty important depending on what game you're looking at. I'm sure this video is getting a bit long by this point, so I'll make it quick. 0 Hour has hostage, intel retrieval, and terrorist hunt all in one single mission type. You need to do all three at the same time, whereas Ground Branch has separate mission types where you can only do intel retrieval or terrorist hunt. They don't have hostages yet. Ground Branch allows a lot more customization for difficulty. You can change the AI amount, AI difficulty, search times, round times, time of day, and mission types. 0 Hour only lets you change this little menu, regular or hardcore mode. That's it. Kinda sucks, but oh well. 0 Hour runs better than Ground Branch by a lot. If you have a lower tier PC, that's definitely the one you're gonna want to look at. Okay, did you get all that? Perfect, because that's it. That's all the information I can give you, so now it's your turn to decide which one will be the better fit for you. Do you want a larger scale CQB experience with tons of customizability, great PvP, and less bugs? Ground Branch will definitely be your go-to. But if you value amazing PvE and smart AI in smaller settings with more to look out for like traps, hostages, and false surrenders, 0 Hour is definitely for you if you can handle a little bit of bugginess. Personally, I prefer 0 Hour. I know I've said it a million times, but I just love how dynamic the AI is. Sure, it's a bit rough in parts, and Ground Branch is much more polished, but I love PvE, and 0 Hour just does it better for me. Plus, the game is $12. Ground Branch is $30. I'm living that broke college student life, so that price tag was very enticing, and I'm sure it is to a lot of you as well. Anywho, if you want to pick up either of these games, feel free to check them out on my game store, nexus.gg/Popmandoop. They're the same price as on Steam, but a little bit of your purchase goes directly to this channel, so I can keep making these videos and keep increasing the quality. Thank you guys for your support. You might not know it, but it really means a lot to me. And that'll finish the video off. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, leave a like, and if you really liked it, leave a subscribe, because we just passed 1,000. That's a huge milestone. I just did a live stream, or at least I was supposed to. I hope it went well. I'm recording this before I did it, so fingers crossed. I hope you guys enjoyed. Thanks so much for all the support you've been giving. 1,000 subscribers is definitely a milestone I never thought I'd hit. I'm still kind of in awe about that, but again, thanks. I hope you guys have a good one. Stay safe, and I'll see you in the next video.